Story 1. I killed my class bully. A classmate decided it was funny to bounce a tennis ball off of my head, repeatedly, all throughout class. During passing period, he bounced it off the back of my head in the hallway. I dropped all of my things, turned around, and said, "If you hit me with that ball one more time, I will lay you out." He decided to throw the ball at my face and pull out a knife. As soon as I saw the flicker of the blade, both of my hands went around his throat. I squeezed until 6 or 7 people pulled us apart. He died in the hospital later due to a crushed larynx. I'm not proud of his death by any means. I don't brag about it. But the son of a bitch shouldn't have bullied me, tormented me, and then threatened me with a weapon. Just for reference, I had to go to a meeting with his and my family. His family wasn't even mad at me. They knew how he was and what would happen if he didn't stop. Unfortunately, he didn't stop until it was too late. Story 2. Killed my neighbor caught raping a 5-year-old boy. Yes, I was 19. I was sitting in my friend's garage, waiting for the waves to pick up. It was about 11 a.m. And all of a sudden we hear a scream. We look up and see my friend's neighbor go running across the driveway. Naked. She was 11. We kind of put together what she was saying. That her brother was locked up in the other neighbor's garage and their 27-year-old partially retarded son was touching them. We bust the garage door open, and I saw what I hope to God nobody ever has to see. A 5-year-old little boy on the floor with so fucking much blood running out of his ass. And the piece of shit that was molesting him standing there with a smile on his face. I beat that piece of shit to death. I have never been filled with that much anger and fear since that day. The guy I killed was black. The kid's parents did not want them used in a trial, so I was on my own. A racially motivated murder. First trial a mistrial. Nudier ruled in and offers me 15 years. You see, he knew that molester raped kids in his own family. I could take up 100 pages telling my story. I did 23 years on that 15 years deal. Hooked up with a white supremacist prison gang. I don't know what you're searching for. How it felt to see the life leave him. Any remorse? Would I do it again knowing the circumstances? All I know is I gave up a large portion of my life, so no kid would ever have to feel that piece of shit breathing on their neck when he's raping them. Story 3. My friend killed his wife in cold blood. I have a friend who is in prison for murder, and he has explained it to me clearly. He says that he feels no remorse for what he did, and he also feels he should be let out. He said, quote, "Why would I feel bad about something that felt good? That bitch had it coming and she knew it. He cheated on his wife, and when she threatened to tell both sides of the family what he did, he bashed her head in with a hammer in the middle of the night while she was sleeping. I remember him being a very quiet person who always seemed to have a nasty streak when punished or confronted. It took 4 cops and a taser to bring him to submission, and even then he was kicking, spitting, and screaming all the way to the police station. For this he also received charges of assaulting an officer and resisting arrest, not like those charges mattered much at that point. I later talked to one of the arresting officers, and he said we were very close to opening fire on him. It got that hairy. As you can see, my friend is unrepentant and remorseless. A remorseful person would have gone willingly and not tried to justify his actions. I have always had a strong suspicion that he is a sociopath that would kill again if let out. Story 4. My grandfather killed his youngest brother to get out of going to Vietnam. He, his brother, and 2 of their friends had their numbers called in the draft for Vietnam. They didn't want to go, obviously, but they didn't come from money, and all worked to support their families. If they got arrested, they'd lose their jobs, and their families would lose their income. So they decided on a different plan to get out of going. They would drive to get their medical checks together, and on the way there they would drive the car into a tree. The plan was to get too injured to get sent to war, but not so injured as to be permanently crippled, and it had to look like an accident, so nobody got arrested. This was in country Western Australia, so they were all going to say they swerved to miss a kangaroo and hit the tree. My grandfather was driving, his friend was in the passenger seat, and the other 2 were in the back. His brother was behind the passenger seat. They hit the tree doing about 40 kilometers per hour, enough to be serious. A broken leg for my grandfather, a broken arm for the guy behind him, and broken ribs all around. The problem was that for maximum impact, and because this was rural Australia in the 60s, they weren't wearing seat belts. And nobody found them or their car for an hour or so. And nobody considered internal injuries in this plan. And my grandfather's brother bled to death from a ruptured spleen in the back seat. He was dead before they got to a hospital. My grandfather never forgave himself, and he never talked about it. My grandma was the only one he ever told, as far as we know, and she didn't tell my mother. And I until long after his death. We found a small box in their bedroom when we were cleaning out the house after she died last year. It had a clipping from the local newspaper at the time about the accident. It said that they had swerved to miss a kangaroo, and called it a tragedy. I don't think my mother told any of her siblings, so technically this is still the family secret. I guess now you're all in on it. Story 5. I accidentally killed a classmate. I apologize for the bad English, but I had to tell this. A couple years ago in a regular school day, I was in geography class that just started after the recess. Two classmates, I am going to call them Bob and Bill, were arguing in the back of the class. I didn't know what the topic was because I was in the first class row, but they started to speak more aggressively while everyone was discussing or waiting for the teacher to come. Both of them started to walk all over the class when suddenly they were in front of my desk. They were now shouting and swearing. Then it happened. I was sitting badly with my feet behind Bob. I didn't move my feet at all. I don't know why, maybe I was too distracted or tired to do something. Bob tripped on my feet and fell down, knocking his nate to the ground. He didn't move, he was there laid in the floor. Bill was telling him to get up, but he realized everyone did that something was wrong. We called a teacher and he immediately called an ambulance. Everyone was panicking. They moved us to another classroom and continued the class while the ambulance left with him. He died 10/15/2018. Since today I have been carrying with this incident. I apologize for making this look like a novel. I don't usually speak English and I don't redact well. I didn't want to keep it as a secret, and nowadays I still feel guilty. Story 6. I killed a stranger in my basement. Going anonymous for obvious reasons. Killed a stranger who was in my basement. Yes, I have taken another man's life, and I would do it again in the same circumstance. A few years ago I was home with my girlfriend. It was a lovely brisk winter day outside. I had a random day off work due to some power problems at the office. Important for what happened next, about 10 a.m. or so, my girlfriend heard what sounded like someone moving around in our basement. Being that I live alone, she asked me if I had a friend over or a dog downstairs. Concerned, I grabbed my handgun. I am legally licensed in my state to carry and own this firearm out of my dresser and went to investigate. In my basement was a man rifling through my desk and office filing cabinets. I positioned myself behind a wall and ordered him to turn around and get on the ground, that I was armed, and for him to show me his hands. I think I caught him off guard. As he turned his head, saw me there with my gun and turned towards me, and fired at me with a handgun he had in his other hand, or he had placed on the desk. The details are a little hazy. I shot him 3 times in the chest, which is what a 9mm took for him to drop to the ground. I moved his pistol with my foot away from his body, and waited for the police to arrive, as my girlfriend had taken the initiative to call them. Turns out he was wanted for assault with a deadly weapon and was suspected in other crimes. Do I regret having to take this man's life? Sure, but I would do it again today if placed in the same situation. Story 7. Killed a man who tried to rape my girlfriend. In the early 90s, my then girlfriend and I worked together in a small retail shop. The shop was open on Thursdays, 9 p.m., closing. Having closed up, we were walking back to her nearby home, taking a shortcut through a small but fairly well-lighted park. We became aware that someone was following us and chose to ignore the person while walking a bit more quickly. What happened next is, in my memory, somewhat hazy in some parts, but sharply clear in others. The guy charged at us, pushed me aside and took my girlfriend to the ground with a knife in hand, saying something like, "I want your girl, go away, or I'll kill her and you." From this on comes the hazy part. Not thinking much, I apparently tackled him off my girlfriend, yelling for her to get help. We tussled back and forth with him ending up on top of me with his knife. I had one arm free, and this I do remember clearly, thrusting my arm, palm open, upward into his nose, and he fell backward off me. Next cognizant memories were hearing, "I think this guy is dead and get the ambulance here ASAP." I thought they were talking about me. No. The blow that I had inflicted to the guy had driven his nasal bones into his brain, and that had killed him. Police investigations, questioning, and a coroner's inquest followed. There was a witness to the scene who accurately described what they saw. I was exonerated completely of any crime. Nonetheless, I felt compelled to find out more about our assailant that night and the man I had killed. It ended up not being a pretty story. I will never get over the fact that I have killed a fellow human being, whatever the circumstance. Years on, I still sometimes wake up at night wondering if I could have done something different. Story 8. Killed two men attacking a lady. Writing anonymously for obvious reasons. I am from Asian subcontinent, and I still remember that fateful day or night to be precise. It was 27 August 2006. I was staying in our college hostel and was literally running towards hostel as gate closes at 22:30 a.m., and if you come after that, you need to bribe the guard. As I was crossing a dimly lit street, I heard a woman scream, "Man," as a curious 18-year-old. I wanted to know what was the commotion about. I saw two men trying to force themselves on a lady or a girl, as she too was around 18 at that time. I tried to avoid getting into any trouble, but then my eyes met that of the ladies. I saw courage, shame, determination, helplessness in those eyes and decided I need to do something. The guys didn't see me. I moved slowly towards them with an iron rod in my hand and struck a huge blow on their head. The impact was so sharp and sudden that they fell unconscious, that is what I thought, and I and the lady escaped from there. It was only next day that I heard they were dead. I know I didn't do the right thing by killing them and should not have taken law into my hands, but my only intention was to save the lady, which I am happy I did. I still get nightmares of that incident. I was never caught, as CCTVs were not that common those days, and only two people who knew about this were the lady and me.